most people are not going to continue pushing forward through those times that are really crappy. And when people shoot you down and tell you you're not going to amount to anything, and then you start believing those things. And so I think, like I said, it was ultimately just trial and error. And like over time, it's been like, okay, I did that and it worked, or I did that and it didn't work. So how can I reframe it?
Hello and welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, your host on this incredible journey of career transformation. Get ready for inspiring stories, valuable insights, and a roadmap to shift your mindset towards a more fulfilling professional life. In each episode, we explore the remarkable journeys of individuals who made a career change, offering motivation, strategies, and the confidence to pursue your dreams. Whether you're feeling stuck, contemplating a change, or just seeking a dose of inspiration, this podcast is your weekly companion. Tune in every Thursday as we uncover the secrets to shifting your day job. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, and I'm so glad that you've joined me today. My guest today is Brieonna Aljets. She was an educator in the public school system until she transitioned into the real estate industry. Now she's taken her education background and her real estate expertise, and she has created a real estate education business where she trains real estate agents. The thing that I love about Brieonna is she's so down to earth and relatable. She talks about her perfectionist tendencies and how in the past those often held her back from taking a chance. So starting her own business was a real big stepping stone for her. And Brieonna talks about the support that she had from her husband and the community that she is a part of, and discusses the challenges and rewards of running her own business. I really enjoyed our conversation and believe that Brieonna offers many practical tips, not only on career transitioning, but on the benefits of believing in one's abilities and betting on yourself. So please welcome Brieonna to the podcast. Welcome, Brieonna, to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. If you don't mind starting off with your story, I know you're a real estate agent and now you help other women do the same, but tell us about your career progression and what that looked like for you.
Sure. So I actually grew up in the real estate industry. My mom was a realtor, so I started following her around and then worked at the office where she was licensed all through high school and thought, I won't do this. So left, worked in real estate through college, got a degree actually in middle school science. Absolutely loved it. Loved student teaching, was so excited, and then started working at a school. And I guess unfortunately and fortunately, because it led me to where I am now, I was placed in a first grade classroom. And most people, if you love first graders, you don't love middle school. And if you love middle school, you don't love first
Yeah.
grade. So since I loved middle school, first grade was not my thing. So I did that for 2 years. That was in Southern Illinois. My husband and I moved out to Colorado, where we still reside. And I fell back into real estate. And that was almost 13 years ago, but still really missed the education piece of it. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to do what I know, which is real estate, and what I love, which is teaching, and created my own real estate education business back in 2019. But now I don't work with clients anymore. I solely just do teaching and consulting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, it's interesting how we take what we know and are good at and enjoy doing, and we apply it in a different way. Like, it looks different than someone might think teaching. And so I love that example of how you weaved it into a different, to your life in a different way.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed it. And this may sound terrible, but you can understand as being an educator, like teaching adults, if they don't show up or if they fail, it's not my problem. And luckily now my students don't really fail, because I have this joke that none of my students fail. But unfortunately, I think in the public school system, in any school system, some of the standards have gotten a little crazy. And I didn't really enjoy the teaching because there was so much overhead of all of this paperwork and all of this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the system that gets in the way of the actual teaching and learning, helping your kids learn and grow. And that's why most teachers get into it. Let's help these kids. And I want to see them succeed and be better and learn and grow and have those aha moments. And then
Mhm.
it's like the education system really just sucks teachers dry from because it requires all these other things that aren't really facilitating that nurture and that care piece.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And the adults don't always get as excited as the children did. I do have some adults that get excited, but, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of what I do too is continuing education in order for them to keep their license. So that was one of my other big pieces when I started teaching was that I was gonna do my best. My joke is that I make it to where you don't wanna stab your eyes out with pencils because a lot of it can be really dry. So that's one
Yes.
that I do my best to add some humor to not make it so monotonous and boring.
Yeah. Which is helpful. I know I work at a software company that makes software for the mortgage industry. So I
Mm,
have some context of like how boring it can get.
yeah.
There are the company offers training if you want to understand better. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Oh,
Ready? I don't think people want that.
found interest. I will probably.
I know. Totally.
So, so that's
Mhm.
good that you recognize that and you try and make it fun.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, how did you go from middle school degree to first grade?
That's a great question, and you actually just gave me a flashback to the principal that hired me asked me that very same thing, and I was like, "You hired me, so why am I here?" How it happened was at the time that I got my degree in Southern Illinois, I got my degree in Tennessee, we moved back to Southern Illinois, where we're from. It was really hard to get a teaching job. The schools were just full, which you would think in middle school science, that's actually one area where a lot of places are short-staffed because most people don't wanna teach science and math, especially. And so I started subbing, and I should have known. I subbed at a school, I think 2 days. And then they had a first grade teacher that quit in the middle of the year. So her job was open. So me and one of the other subs that they had applied, and we went through the interview process and they hired me. And I should have known then that I've only subbed here for 2 days and you're already looking to hire me. Unfortunately, that school had 40% turnover rates every year. And then I landed in the principal's office telling her I needed help because honestly, I didn't know what I was doing because as in first grade, you're teaching them how to read and write. And once they're in middle school, you're teaching them science and they already know how to read and write. And she said, "How did you land here anyway?" And I looked at her and I said, "I don't know. You hired me." It just was not really a good fit from the beginning. And unfortunately, it tainted me because I graduated and I was like, I found my passion. I absolutely love this. And I've been asked would I go back to a classroom if it was middle school science. And I don't think at this point I would.
Yeah. It is interesting because I can relate to that in some different ways as well. Like how you don't recognize the signs and sometimes you gotta go through it to figure it out in hindsight. Yeah, I should have known better, but something about it made me keep going.
I was freshly out of school. I had been offered my first job. I think a lot of
Exactly.
people get in that situation, right? And they're excited. I think that's why teacher burnout is huge. What did you teach?
I taught elementary school, fourth and sixth grade.
Oh, okay. See that sixth, that would have been more my style.
Yeah, and here, sixth grade is in the elementary school, so I'm teaching everything, not just the science.
Yeah, where we're at, we're K through 5 is elementary and then 6, 7, 8 is middle.
Yeah. And that's how I grew up in Florida, so it was definitely different being out
Mhm.
here in Utah. But anyway, yeah, so elementary, and I can relate because I liked working with the older kids, and I had some experience, like, subbing in first grade or just seeing what it looked like, and I'm like, "More power to you."
I felt like I was just running a circus. And I was in a low income area unfortunately. So that created some stress of just wanting the best for these kids. And some of them, I don't think they were fed unless it was at school. We had them from what was our school day? I think it was 7:30 to almost 4 because we fed them multiple meals. The summers were shorter because we can't leave them on the streets. It was just it was a and so it takes a mental toll. And then unfortunately, as teachers are not paid well. So, yeah, when you're struggling to make ends meet and you're really stressed about these kids, it's a lot. So,
Yeah, it is. It is a lot. And I would say that is similar to why I left teaching as well. Like it
mhm.
just emotionally, physically, mentally, just not a great place for me, at least. Some
Right.
people can stay and can
Yeah, some people,
make
it's their lifelong career and they're amazing at it, and that's
them.
great, but it wasn't for me. But some days I'm like, "I'm still using my degree."
Absolutely. I love to talk about transferable skills and like giving yourself credit for, yeah, it might have looked at one way in this job, but it still applies in this job.
For sure.
I'm curious, what made you venture into real estate? Was it because it was like a known area for you? Because you had said previous, oh, I don't want to work in this industry. So what brought you back to it?
I think probably the biggest thing was the town that we moved to in Colorado. I think at the time, the year-round population, so we live in a really small ski town. Now we're about 30 miles south of it, but it's still all in the same valley. I think it was about 2,000 people maybe. So needless to say, the job market is pretty slim. And we moved in, my husband found a job, and then I got talking to my neighbor, which we became very close friends, and she worked in real estate. So she said, "What do you do?" And I said, "My degree is in education, but I have a lot of experience in real estate." And she said, "I work in real estate. Why don't you come talk to the owner of our company?" At that time, I went and talked to him, and he was like, "I don't really have anything for you right now, but I wanna keep in touch. Maybe we could do project-based." And then 2 weeks later, he reached out and he said, "Hey, our office manager just put her notice in. If you" I was back in Illinois. He said, "If you'll fly out here and train with her, the job's yours." And so it was, okay, if we can. And a lot of people, especially that work in resort towns, so to speak, whether that be beach, mountain, whatever, a lot of them have to work multiple jobs because it's such a there's, like, shoulder seasons, like, when the town isn't busy because it's not ski season or mountain biking. And so for me to take a year-round full-time job in something I was comfortable with, it just felt right, and I fell back into it, and now I really enjoy it. Like I said, I'm just not on the I call myself the back of the house. I call the front end of the house the actual and I'm a licensed broker, I have a managing broker's license, but I don't work with clients. That's the front of the house. I like the back of the house. I'm the geek, which brings out the middle school science in me. I like to review contracts and transactions and clauses and contracts and make sure the forms are all correct. That's what excites me, which most people are like, "Oh my god, that's the worst part," but that's the part that I enjoy. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Networking and relationship building and how sharing with the people around you, like what you're doing or what you're looking for, can open up doors and opportunities. And really taking advantage of those, like you were able to meet with her manager, boss, I don't,
Yep.
the owner and build that connection. And it paid off in the end. And so, like, for listeners, you just never really know what a conversate like, what one conversation about your career can lead to.
Oh,
I
it's
love that example.
my husband actually works for himself as well. He's a metal artist. So, the starving artist term is legit. He was a prior EMT firefighter and then went through stage 4 cancer. And after that, it was like, "You know what? You gotta follow your passion," which was artistry. So that's what he does now. And that is what so both being entrepreneurs sometimes is really exciting, sometimes it's really scary. But we always tell each other, like, all they can say is no when it comes to making those connections and having those conversations or asking, "Hey, can I talk to so and that's honestly how a lot of the doors have opened for me is I just started asking. I just recently got back into teaching, like, pre-licensing classes, and same, I got in touch with the Colorado Real Estate School, the biggest school in Colorado, and said, "I would love to help you," and they're like, "Yeah, how can you help?" And I think sometimes we think, "Oh, they won't like me or they're better than me. I'm not big enough for them or I don't know enough." But you fake it till you make it. Uh, and I know you're not faking brain surgery till you make it, but there are certain aspects of, especially being an entrepreneur, that you can. I've had people reach out to me and say, can you help us redo this system for our real estate office? Or we're looking at revamping our policies and bylaws. Can you help us? Sure, I can help you. I'll put together a proposal. Learn as you go, and that's how you learn. You're never going to be 100% prepared. And trust me, I'm a person that I want everything to be perfect before I do it. And I've really had to back out of that. You can sit on your thumbs all day and be like, oh, it's not quite ready. It's not quite ready. No, it's never going to be ready if you don't just put it out there. And nothing that you do from the beginning is exactly how you want it. The program that I started my company on in 2019 has evolved tremendously. I'm actually in the process of redoing it again right now. So you just have to start somewhere and just ask. All people can say is, no, we've never, my husband and I both, and obviously we're in two different aspects, but we've never had anybody be rude. It's just, no, we're not looking for that right now, or contact us in a year or whatever. And then I just jot it on my calendar and try to keep the conversation going for if someday that door ever does open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And the people that are rude, you don't want to work with them anyway. They're not your people. And so not taking that personally and saying, I don't need to worry about their reaction to me. Like,
Mhm.
it's not about me and they're not my people. I'm going to move on somewhere else. And then, yeah, that follow up piece for sure. Just making sure that you're still in touch somehow with those people that maybe said, oh, not right now. Yeah,
Mhm. And I love
definitely.
that you said it's not about me, because I think we take everything onto ourselves instead, and then that's been a big thing I've been working on. It's not about me. They're either going to love you or they're going to hate you. There's no money in the middle. And I love that because I think we want, especially as me being an educator and being in front of people. I taught on Zoom yesterday. I think I had about 80 people on the call. And I want all 80 people to love me. But that's just not how it's going to go, because we're human and we don't love everybody and we don't connect with everybody. And that's why we're all different. And so I love that because I remind myself of that. There's not money in the people that are just like, oh, she's okay. You're going to have the people that love you, and you're going to have the people that you're not for. And that's okay. Those people that you're not for can move on and find their educator that is for them.
Yeah, for sure. And they deserve that and you deserve that, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. So it's perspective shifting and
Right.
practicing it because it is a practice. It's not, we all want to be liked, you know?
Oh, for sure. And it's an everyday practice, and I'm not sure it's ever something we master.
Yeah. You also talked about like how you're the back office person and that you love things that most people don't love. How did you like figure that part out?
That's a great question. I think part of it was that I definitely gained some confidence in that area as far as teaching. And I think where it probably stemmed from some of it, and I think some of this probably did help from teaching first grade. I hear from a lot of my students, like, you have a really good way of explaining things, or you make the pieces of the contract really easy for me to understand, because the contracts, they're not, yes, they are, at the end of the day, they're written by attorneys, but they're not, there are definitely some of those words in there, hereby, within, like the words that kind of throw people. And so I would say that it's probably because I gained some confidence in finding a way to explain those things to people that made it like, oh, now I get it. And how I did that was when I was still working with clients, I found a way to explain it to my clients, because the last thing I wanted was a client that was confused or signing something they didn't understand. And then I translated that into my teaching. And so I would say that's probably why I teach a lot of different things, but contracts is definitely one of my favorite. And I think it's because it's come from that feedback from my students of, oh, you're actually really good at this because you do XYZ. And so I've built on that.
Yeah. I think that's a great example because it goes along with what you're talking about earlier of like starting before you're ready. Like
Mhm.
you were teaching something and then you got feedback on that thing from your students that helped you recognize, oh, this is a strength of mine, right? And so paying
Mhm.
attention to the feedback that you're getting in the process and being willing to pivot and shift along the way is a really valuable skill to cultivate. Can we talk a little bit more about the idea of starting before you're ready?
Yeah. I am a recovering perfectionist. And I say that because I still embrace the fact that I'm a perfectionist. I've just had to change my mindset around it. And actually, I just finished a book not too long ago. The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control is what it's called. But it was a great book because it really shifted the perspective on a perfectionist. I feel like a lot of times that perfectionism word is looked at in a negative light. And she really shifts it to using it as a positive, and this is why you think that way, and there's a reason there's perfectionists on this earth, and there's a reason there's not perfectionists, and it was a really interesting book. I think a little bit of the same came out of the starting before you're ready, because I finally would put something out there, and then it was like, "Oh, I'm gaining traction on this," or I started a website, and then it was like, oh, people were starting to ask if you have a website, and so then it was that feeling of, "Yeah, I have a website, here it is." And I never felt, "Oh gosh, they're gonna go to my website." It was like, "I have a website, it's not great," and I wouldn't say that to people, but it was like, "Yeah, I have a website, here it is." And then those things evolve. That website is completely down now, and I've completely shifted it, and it's completely brand new within the last, I guess that's been 2 years now. And so I think it's just you have to do trial and error, I guess it's how I would say it, and I tell my real estate clients that, like, "Hey, you have to just start." And if you go back and listen to some of your favorite podcasters, for example, I love Rachel Hollis, I obviously listen to Kathy Heller regularly. Those are pretty much the top 2 that come to my mind. If you go back and listen to their first episodes, they're not I don't wanna say they're not very good, but if you compare from then till now, and I think that's what really helped me. It's the same as looking at, and I say this because I saw something the other day. Look at Carrie Underwood when she auditioned for American Idol, and look at her now. Had she never taken the confidence to try out for American Idol because she thought, "I'm too this or I'm too that," we wouldn't have the amazing artist that she is today. And I think we feel like those people like Elon Musk, for example, and Carrie Underwood or Beyoncé, I think we feel like they came out of the womb like that, and they didn't. They just had the courage, and we all have the courage. It's just putting that courage into play, and I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm working on it, but I'm a fear-based person. My husband is not. My husband is I don't wanna call him a daredevil. He just is willing to take risks a lot more, and so I've been telling my son, I'm like, "Hey, think about it as carrying around, like, suitcases or buckets of water. Your fear is always going to exist, but the courage has to outweigh that, and you just have to keep moving forward." And this may sound silly, but even the other day, he was like, "But fear stinks sometimes." And I was like, "It does, but if we didn't have fear, we would probably all be dead." And he was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if you didn't have fear, you'd go jump in the river and you'd probably drown because you'd get caught up in rapids. If you didn't have fear, you'd go jump off the roof of the house and you'd break your legs." And so it has to exist. It's just using your courage to push past that and know that nobody was just born into this perfectionism and everything is going to be great. Those people worked at it. We think, "Oh, they were just an overnight success." No, they weren't.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, I think that that's a great example. Fear is necessary, and it's a matter of managing it in
mhm,
the different situations. Idea I've talked about before on the podcast, but we only see people in their like final state, like in the success. We don't see the journey to get there. And it's the people that have changed history or made an impact are the ones that kept going when the going got tough for
mhm.
them, right? We just don't see that part of it.
No. And same, I listened to, Kevin Hart, the stand-up comedian. He has a great book, and same, like, you listen to the stuff that he went through, and I think that's the thing. Most people are not gonna continue pushing forward through those times that are really crappy, and when people shoot you down and tell you you're not going to amount to anything, and then you start believing those things. And so I think, like I said, it was ultimately just trial and error, and, like, over time, it's been like, "Okay, I did that and it worked," or "I did that and it didn't work." So how can I reframe it? I've definitely written real estate classes that I teach a couple times and nobody really shows up. And it's okay. People didn't have an interest in that. But I'm not just going to say I'm terrible at teaching. That topic must not be what people are seeking, or maybe they're not seeking it right now. And so I'm going to shift to, with the NAR lawsuits going on around real estate commissions. It's been very simple to determine what my clients need at this time, but it's not always easy to determine what they want.
And I think that's another skill that teachers have is the ability to like change on a dime or recognize, okay, this didn't work. I'm going to try this instead. And yeah, it's just interesting to see it applied in different ways, in different careers, whatever. But
For sure. I tell myself all the time, I'm like, fail forward, because it's not a failure. If we never failed, then like when I think about it that way, like if I never failed and everything just always went correctly, how would you really wouldn't have a gauge, in my opinion, if there was never a setback or a failure. Unfortunately, if there wasn't sadness, you wouldn't know what happiness felt like.
yeah, I like the word contrast.
Yeah.
Like, contrast is necessary in order to recognize and live a full life, essentially.
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes because you're like, I don't want to feel like this. But yeah, exactly. You've got to have both sides of it.
Can you discuss a tough moment in your transition and how you stayed resilient?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I started my side business in 2019. I always worked another position within the real estate industry and also had my side business. And so those other positions I worked were I would hang my license at an office and work in a management position. I've done marketing, which marketing's not my thing. I learned that. So that was up until actually just the end of 23. So hasn't quite been a year since I finally jumped off the cliff, so to speak, and went 100% out on my own. But I would say that what would happen is I was getting those management positions and then I would end up doing like administrative work. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I did the administrative work when I started when I was 15. And so you reach a point where you're like, okay, I'm beyond this. This isn't really what I want to do. And so a challenge for me is that it was finding where can I find an office that is going to appreciate the skills that I have. And living in a small town is especially tough because it's hard for one office to employ me because we don't have a lot of brokers in the area. And so I was hopping around a little bit and I kept thinking like, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. And then finally my husband was like, you're not going to find it. If you want to do it, you have to do it all on your own. And so it was really challenging because I made that leap really before I was ready to give up the work. I was not ready to give up that piece of income. And
Mhm.
I thought that I had built my own business to sustain without that extra income. And that has definitely been a challenge, letting that income go. I would encourage people to do it because it's really liberating and it's definitely been a bittersweet thing. I actually, the last couple weeks, I had a little burnout. So I'm going to be honest, I took a little hiatus. I've been reading books on my porch, but I will say just within the last couple days, like I'm feeling fired up again. I started revamping some of my courses, but that has definitely been challenging is that income piece and making that leap. It was easy to do. It's been hard in the aftermath to keep yourself employed. Before, I always had that income to rely on. And now it's okay if I don't do any work today, like nobody else is doing it for me, or I'm not just automatically going to get this paycheck because I'm employed at this office. So that's probably been one of my biggest challenges that, like I said, it's bittersweet for sure.
Yeah. So what is it that keeps you going when the income or like that safety net doesn't really come through?
Part of it is when the power bill comes due. No, but ultimately, it's the thought of going back and working for someone.
Yeah.
And not because I think sometimes people think it's, oh, she must not play well with others, or I do sometimes miss the camaraderie of like, an office to go to, but I really enjoy the freedom of being able to just create how I want to, not have someone say, "No, don't create that. You need to create this," or "We need this." And like I said, with my husband's illness and then with my son being 8, I've really enjoyed being able to, if it's Thursday afternoon and we want to go out to lunch together or we want to go on a hike, I feel like I can go do that and not feel like I have to answer to someone, so to speak. So that's really my biggest motivator is, I've sometimes looked at the classified section in the newspaper just to see what's available. And I do that to myself because it'll be like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And I'm like, yeah, I do that, which I do that for myself. But if I want to take off on Friday and go skiing in the winter with a friend, I do that, but then I might be working Saturday afternoon. So I have the ability to shift, which is great. A lot of companies in general are doing that now because I think after COVID, they've discovered, oh, people can work from home and they're still productive.
Yeah. Or just the job market in general, maybe like how many people are applying to jobs and I get to make my own way and not have to rely
Right.
on. And I love that you said if I couldn't find what I was looking for, so I created it. There was a quote from my latest podcast that really stood out to me from my guest. She said, "We let money prevent us or stop us from creating."
Mhm.
And it goes right in line with your story of, okay, my income may not be as consistent as it once was because I had this cushion, right? And I still had
Yeah.
of doing two things at once. But if I want what I'm looking for, then I have to step away from that and be willing to take the risks. Yeah. And
Yeah.
work through the stuff that comes up in the process. Because it's not just the money piece that's scary. It's like the facing your inner perfectionist, like
Yeah.
coming out in the process and having to work through those emotions.
And you have to have people to support you. That is one area that I have some friends that will say it to both sides. Like, how do you handle that your husband isn't always selling a piece of art? And then how are you paying the bills? Or vice versa. Like when I took my hiatus, wasn't Cody mad at you that you're not working? Trust me, we have other issues in our marriage. But that is a one place that we are solid in is we've always supported one another in what our passions are and what we're trying to do. And I thank him for that because it would be difficult if I had a significant other or a partner, someone breathing down my neck, "Hey, you gotta make more money," or "You need to go get a job." And that's hard sometimes because we're like, "Okay, one of us has gotta step it up this month," but that also is what keeps you going, I think, because I see him putting in the effort and then he sees me putting in the effort, and so it's like a two-way street.
Yeah. I like that you brought up a support system. Can you talk about your support system? Obviously, your husband. Was there anybody else, or maybe in the networking process, or you have a mentor that kind of has helped you through?
So, like I said, I started in 2019. It was very small. I would say at that time it was like a hobby, but it all starts as that. And then I hired myself a business coach in 2021. Did not really have the money for that, but I'm so grateful that I did. And I still talk to her. And I still have months where I'm like, I can't really afford to pay her. But then I hang up the phone with her and I'm like, that's why I'm paying her because she just really helped keep me accountable, gives me a lot of ideas that I wouldn't think about, brainstorms with me. And my parents became a support system. I will say in the beginning, and I think it was just like fear-based of, "Oh my gosh, our daughter is just gonna work for herself." They were like, "How are you gonna pay the bills?" And so that almost gave me some motivation of, "I'll show you how I'm gonna pay the bills." And now they're like, "We're so proud of you, good job." But it took a shift, like, I had to prove it to them, but it's also a generational thing. My dad worked the same job for 30 plus years, and my mom sold real estate for 30 years, and we don't really see that anymore.
Right.
And so I think that was part of it too, was like, I had a stable income and I paid all the bills, and what do you mean you're just gonna go work for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I felt with teaching. Like everybody was like, "Oh, but it's teaching and it's safe and reliable. You'll always have a job and you always have benefits. What's wrong?"
No, we got that when my husband left the fire industry. It was like, you're gonna leave those great benefits and the great pay and the pension, but at the end of the day, not to be, like, morbid, but none of that means anything when you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
Oh, great, I had health insurance. I'm not gonna lay on my deathbed and wish I had a clean I'm gonna be glad that I enjoyed things instead of spending my weekend deep cleaning. But no, my husband and I both get a lot of that. When we pay private health insurance, and I'm not gonna lie, it's really expensive,
Mm.
but that's everything's a choice. And same, we have friends that are like, "We have to work this job." And I'm like, "If that's how you look at it, then yeah, you do, but you don't have to." Or I have people say, "How did you guys just up and move to Colorado?" We sold our house, we packed the moving truck, and we drove it out here. You can. I truly believe everything is a choice.
Yeah. And it comes down to your values. And if you're willing to reflect on your values and decide if that's really where you want to stay. Because we could talk about the generational, our parents, they value that security of having the job, the pension, whatever. They could change their mind though, but it's a matter of, is that something that they want to do? And I think we're always evolving and hopefully building more self-awareness as we age, hopefully, and reflecting on, okay, so now that I'm here in this stage, like, and I'm maybe not happy or I'm not feeling excited about XYZ, like, then taking that as an opportunity to reevaluate, where do my values lie and what do I want to do about
Mhm.
it, right?
Oh,
So
yeah, my dad's job that he worked for 30 plus years, he was miserable, and he still talks about it, and he's been retired for 18 years, and that was also some motivation for me of growing up in that, and it was like, this isn't worth it, and I appreciate that he did that because, of course, I was part of the reason he did that, obviously, but yeah, just I don't want to personally live like that. I don't wanna when towards the end of my teaching, like I said, I only even made it 2 years. The whole Sunday scaries, like, Sunday would roll around, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to go back tomorrow." I started getting sick to my stomach, and it was like, "This isn't worth it." And I just recently, honestly, within the last couple months, I got a job offer. It would be starting about more money than I've ever made, but I know that it is not the right fit for me, and so I had to turn it down. My husband was like, "Why is it worth it?" He's, "Cool, you're gonna be making a lot of money, but then you're gonna be miserable, and you're gonna make Cullum, our son, and I miserable." And I was like, "You're right. That's not worth any amount of money."
yeah,
To me personally, to some people, it is, and that's fine.
yeah, yeah. I
Mhm.
think that's a great example. What are your priorities? What do you value? What's most important? And trusting that you know yourself well enough that you're gonna um, listen to that intuition and then follow through with this decision you've made, right? Like with this entrepreneurial endeavor, like you're trusting yourself that you're going to make it happen. And it's because of all of these things that have happened or all
Right.
these examples that you've had that has led you to this place where you're like, no, I'm not, I'm choosing to live a different way. And
Mhm.
I'm going to make it happen.
And I definitely have days of doubt. I've had a couple days of, "Should I have taken that job? Should I call him and keep still available?" And then no, because the money just it doesn't make it worth it for me
Right.
personally.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
Can you offer any practical tips or resources for listeners to help them with shifting their mindset when it comes to making a career change or determining your values to help you make decisions around your career?
Yep. So one thing that I have done, and I was just looking because there's probably some note cards sitting around here with some words on them. I'm a big fan of writing things down. I like to do pros and cons. I was like, okay, with the pro of me moving to this company, what's the con? And then when I came down to that final office of, okay, Brie, you can't move again. You've got to just go on your own, or you have to stick this out. I do a lot of jotting words or little phrases down of what's the benefit of staying here or what's the benefit of leaving. Honestly, I think listening to podcasts has really been great for me and just reminding myself people are doing this every day, all day. And those people are they different than me? Sure, they're different than me, but they're not better than me. They're not more qualified than me. they might be more educated in certain spaces, but I feel like we all have a brain. It's just what's your capacity and how can you use that? And then at the end of the day, I know it's cliche and cheesy, but you have to believe in yourself. And that took me a while, like I said, because I was raised in the, and I think a lot of people that are probably my age, because their parents are in that generation of you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job in that degree, and you work that job and you stay in like that comfort zone, so to speak, of just like you were saying, like the benefits and the guaranteed money. But really for me, like just listening to more podcasts on entrepreneurship. I also am a fan of masterclass. I enjoy that because it's for me, especially with the masterclass, because it's videos, podcasts, obviously you can watch too. It's just watching those people and they're just a person just like I am. And so if they can do it, I don't really understand why I don't have the ability to also go out and make that happen.
I love how Kathy Heller is like, when you see someone else doing it, gives you permission for you to do it
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
And that's my goal with this podcast is to like give women permission. Like you can do it. You can choose to make a change and live life on your terms, right? We don't
Yeah.
have to adhere to what society or maybe our culture has taught us, like you said, that linear path.
Mhm.
You do have options. And so embrace that and explore what opportunities are available to you.
And that reminds me too, I'm pretty sure it was Kathy Heller that interviewed the woman that started Auntie Anne's Pretzels.
Yes.
I loved that because sometimes I get caught up in, am I making a difference? I'm teaching real estate, but sometimes it's finding what you're good at and what you enjoy, and then using that to facilitate maybe where you're really trying to get. And it makes me think of that because she talks about it on that podcast. My goal was not to sell a bunch of pretzels but she has been able to facilitate things in her life and to make a difference because of the money that she has gained from selling pretzels. And so she started selling earrings. And I think people start doing something thinking like, I can't make a living doing this. But over time, all of that stuff accumulates. And I think you can absolutely make a job or make an income out of your hobbies or your passion if you're willing to invest the time. I think you've got to put in the labor in the beginning, and then maybe you can reach a point where it coasts. But I make the joke with my real estate clients that are brand new and they're like, how often do you go in the office? And they're like, I was in the office like 5 hours this week. And I'm like, okay, if you're trying to make a difference, is 5 hours a week going to do it? Or if you were trying to gain more muscle and you went to the gym 10 minutes, 3 days a week, yes, that's going to make a difference, but not as much as if you went 5 days a week for 20 minutes.
Yeah. I think definitely a lot to think about for our listeners. And yeah, what is your purpose for a career? Because you're not always going to find what you're passionate about, but maybe you're good at it and you do enjoy it to the extent that it's going to then facilitate you serving or living your life in a certain way.
That's
So,
where yeah, that's where I had to get. I love what I'm doing, and so I'm doing it, but this is not my long-term dream is to open a float spa, those deprivation tank floats,
yeah.
and do personal training just for women. Like, that's my long-term vision, but I'm using this as a vehicle to get there. And also, I'm coaching one-on-one real estate agents, and so it's also giving me that practice, so to speak, of, okay, if I move into personal training one day, like, I can use a lot of these same skills because motivating people and coaching people, really, at the core, it's a lot of the same thing. And so, one day I will have a float spa. I know that it's not today or tomorrow, but that's my long-term vision, and that might change too, but
Yeah.
that's where it sits right now.
I love that. I look forward to that day and
Yeah.
keep me posted.
I think it was just a couple episodes ago on my podcast, I interviewed a woman who owns a float spa in Nashville, and she kinda same, she was in real estate, fell into it, and she talks about, like, the benefits of floating. It's crazy. They're using it to heal, like, PTSD, severe anxiety, depression, because it puts your brain in that theta state while you're doing it. It's really interesting. So if you have one close, I recommend you go give it a whirl.
Okay.
It's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of your podcast, tell listeners where they can find you to either learn more from you or work with you.
Yeah. So my website is BrieonnaAljets.com, just like my name, which Brittany, I'm sure you'll throw that in the show notes so people don't have to try to spell that one out. So that is all of my real estate related stuff. So yeah, anybody that's in the real estate realm, I have helped people across state lines. So it doesn't just have to be in Colorado. I do have a podcast, Brittany, like I mentioned to you before we started. It is on a bit of a hiatus. I will be resuming, but I do have, oh goodness, I think there's almost 80 episodes on there. And it is called What's the Cheese, which is a pun off of my nickname, Brie. And it was born out of my husband's cancer journey and me finding a way to work through that. And then it evolved, and I've got some cool interviews on there. So, yeah, those are the best places to find me.
Awesome. Brianna, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And I think that you offered a lot of value to my listeners. So I'm so glad that we could connect.
Me too. I appreciate you having me. And like I said, anybody out there listening that is trying to bite the bullet and make it happen, here's my advice to just go do it. Because trust me, I was scared to death, but made it happen anyway.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
For sure.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and a huge thank you to our guest for sharing such valuable insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback helps others discover the podcast, and it means the world to me as I continue to bring you content that supports your career change journey. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're feeling stuck in a career that doesn't fulfill you anymore, I'm here to help. My one-on-one career coaching program is designed specifically for women who are ready to break free from the grind and discover a career that truly excites them. In our sessions, we'll uncover what's holding you back, identify your true passions, and create a clear, actionable plan to transition you into a career that aligns with your deepest values. You can get in touch with me directly at shiftyourdayjob@gmail.com, or you can connect with me on social media at shiftyourdayjob. I'd love to hear from you and support you on this journey. Until next time, I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and together, let's shift your day job.